I don't know if y'all had that one kid in high school who you'd like talk to at the lunch table and they'd be like, yeah, I'm into some pretty dark and edgy music, some pretty screwed up stuff. And you'd be like, okay, like, what do you listen to? And they'd be like, Green Day. Listening to music as an art form can be a lot of different things. You can listen to the most grandiose symphonies that are so beautiful and make you feel like you're flying like a swan. Or it could be catchy pop that you just can't get out of your head, and it just makes your day so much better. Music can transport you to some very beautiful places, but sometimes it can transport you to weird, evil, screwed up places as well. And that's what we're gonna be talking about today, as we explore the world of extreme music. Today, I am going to be finding some of the most extreme, obscure music I can find that pushes the boundaries of what music even is. And I'm going to be listening to it for you guys today, so you don't have to. Now listen, when I'm talking about extreme, obscure music or dark music, we're not talking about dark or edgy music based off of the subject matter, because while I do think there is a really important place for art that confronts dark and difficult subject matter, I'm really not into making a video that just sort of fetishizes human suffering or despair like that. Also, there are already a lot of videos on like the dark music iceberg. Instead of listening to that type of music, we're going to be listening to the most insane and obscure music I can find sonically. I'm going to be guiding you through 7 layers that get progressively more insane of the most mind-melting, ear-bleeding music that I can find. Now, just as a small disclaimer, while this video is about finding insane music in terms of the sonic qualities, a lot of the artists on this list also deal with intense themes. But if you are interested in exploring any of the artists on this list, please proceed with caution and do your research. Because it makes sense. If you make music that sounds like this, you've probably gone through a rough time at one point or another. And speaking of going through rough times, it's a good time to bring up today's sponsor for this video, BetterHelp. I know what it's like to feel anxious and overwhelmed, especially with social media where you see a lot of people succeeding all the time. And you kind of end up feeling like you aren't where you need to be and you should be on a different or higher level. You start adding all this internal pressure about feeling behind or stuck, and it really becomes overwhelming and can cripple you from improving yourself. I remember for a long time when my YouTube and my clothing brand didn't feel like it was progressing, and I would go on social media and feel similar things. And it would put me in a state where I was anxious all the time. And the thing about anxiety is that it actually makes the situation often worse than it actually is. Which is why I want to talk about BetterHelp and how it can help you if you're in a similar situation. With BetterHelp, a therapist can help you untangle your own internal values that are causing you to have this anxiety. Whether it's to break down vague feelings of being behind into specific, addressable concerns, or just to process those feelings of inadequacy and comparison. It's really hard to conquer anxiety on your own, and it's better to have someone who is a trained professional along with you on that journey so that they can help you along the way. The new year is a blank space for you to write a new story, and BetterHelp makes it easier to get started. Fill out a questionnaire and you will match with a therapist in a few days' time. And the great thing about BetterHelp is that it's a fully online service, making therapy more comfortable and convenient. You can connect with a therapist from a diverse network of over 30,000 licensed professionals with a range of specialties and backgrounds. And you can easily switch therapists anytime with no extra cost. BetterHelp makes sure therapists on the platform are well qualified, and their customer support team is there to help you if you have any questions. Start fresh any day of the year with BetterHelp. Click the link in the description to get 10% off your first month of therapy. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. Here is how this is going to work. Basically, there are 7 layers, each more obscure and strange than the next. The first layer is going to be basically mainstream artists. I'm going to guide you through these artists, listen to a little bit of them, and give you guys my thoughts. Layer 1 are mainly mainstream-esque artists, but they probably make some more strange or jarring music. The first good example of this is Kanye West with Yeezus. And when this album was released, you would have thought he had released the plague upon people, because people thought this album was so unlistenable at the time. What's cool about Yeezus is that it was an industrial hip-hop album before industrial hip-hop was popular. But yeah, this album still holds up. it's still very good. Is it as extreme as the reactions were when it first released? 12 years later, I would say no. I think in today's modern rap music where we have artists like Carson, I don't think it's as jarring 12 years later. It basically predicted what the future sound of hip hop would be. Next is 9 Inch Nails. 9 Inch Nails was basically the first artist to bring industrial music to the mainstream. They're industrial rock with some ambient or electronic industrial elements. So let's give it a listen. When this came out back in the early 90s, it felt very jarring and extreme at times. But being real, this is very digestible. It is dark, it is a little intense. Hard to not say that Trent Reznor is a musical genius. Next, let's do The Velvet Underground. A lot of their most popular songs are very listenable. They're very poppy, they're very catchy, but there are a few moments where they've known for being more. So let's give it a listen. This is a lot more difficult to listen to, and I will say that this is not as enjoyable as the other artists so far. I think like a main reason for that is because the mixing wasn't as good back when this was recorded in 1967 and 1968. Is it really listenable at all? Yes, but not super. I would say personally I enjoy this a little less. I respect it. I love the Velvet Underground. And I respect that the Velvet Underground and this music really inspired sort of a lot of the artists on this. But is it something I would turn on every day? Not. It's a bit harsh. Death Grips is another industrial rap outfit. Basically, they are sort of when we talk about more extreme or obscure music that most people know to point to. So let's give it a listen. Is the music intense? Absolutely. Is it obscure or weird sounding? 100%. But is it catchy? Yes. The thing about Death Grips is that their song structures are so well written, they're so tight, they make you want to keep listening. Very, very tight, very, very, very good. But like these two elements put together, great songwriting with these very harsh elements, make it very listenable, very fun. All right, next we're going on to 100 gecs. 100 gecs basically brought hyperpop to the mainstream. But they have all these crazy moments. I remember when 100 gecs first came out, people thought it was super bizarre. Let's give it a shot. Definitely loud, definitely wild, but for the most part their music is pretty listenable. It's like these little meme areas where like at the end of the song they'll throw in like an extreme noise death metal section for like the last 20 seconds. Is it as crazy as everybody says? I don't think so. It feels like they're doing sort of the noisy, obscure elements as like a meme. All right, next let's listen to JPEG Mafia. JPEG Mafia is another huge alternative or industrial rapper. I think earlier in his career he was known for being more experimental. Now I think he's a little bit less. But we're gonna listen to some of his older stuff and see how that is.
Show. I've been out in Bed-Stuy, chilling with my feet up, laughing at these SoundCloud niggas drop.
Very ASMR-y. The experimental moments are much more experimental, but the poppier, more conventional moments are a lot more conventional than you'd think. He doesn't really blend the two as much as you think. It feels like it's like an experimental moment here and then a conventional moment here. It's really weird, and the mixing of it is very, very unique in some places. Is it good? Absolutely. It's very experimental in terms of the mixing. All right, let's move on to layer 2. We're not necessarily underground with this layer, but we for sure are not mainstream. This is stuff that's loved by like a very specific cult of people. A lot of this is very much like Anthony Fantano core or Rate Your Music core. That is more experimental or extreme. And the first that we're going to get into is Have a Nice Life. Have a Nice Life has an amazing legendary record called Death Consciousness, which you've probably heard a few songs of. And it's a crazy mash of a lot of different things. First of all, it's shoegaze, it's post-punk, it's industrial, but then it's also drone music. Drone music has nothing to do with Obama like you might think, but instead is all about these low, dark, humming sounds, dark, low, sustained notes. Let's get into it. Very sad music, very good, some very loud, harsh moments, but the majority of it is very listenable. All right, next artist we're going to cover is Salem. Salem is a very unique band from the Midwest United States, basically blending electronic music, taking inspiration from dark southern trap music that's been chopped and screwed, as well as industrial music. And you get the genre known as witch house, which they basically pioneered. So let's check it out. This is really, really good. I'm a huge fan of Salem, and while I will say this is, again, indeed dark, I wouldn't say it's unlistenable or even that harsh, but it doesn't make my skin crawl. In fact, it's quite pleasant. Next on this list is Ethel Cain. While you might know Ethel Cain for some of her more catchy music, she's also ventured into more intense, with being influenced by doom metal, drone music, as well as power electronics. Power electronics is basically a really extreme version of industrial music. Sometimes it's also called death industrial. But let's get into this new album, Perverts. Perverts, this album is incredible, and I will say if Ethel Cain didn't have the track record for making poppy music that she has, I think this album would fit more closely in with like a few layers down. Honestly, even down to layer 6 or 7. But yeah, this is an incredibly jarring, dark ambient, power electronics drone album. I will say so far this is probably the most experimental thing that we have covered. Next, we're going to look into Health. Health is another industrial band. I think they're probably one of the more popular in contemporary industrial acts besides Nine Inch Nails. Fun fact, if you like Crystal Castles, a lot of Crystal Castles' most popular songs samples Health's vocals. So if it sounds familiar to you, that's why. Really good. I enjoy this. Is it good? Yes. Is it super isolating or weird? Not really. Next we have Godspeed You Black Emperor. This band is super well known for their post-rock sound, and post-rock is basically rock music that disregards all the conventions and songwriting qualities. So there's not a lot of catchy hooks or choruses. So let's give it a listen. Almost gets into the territory of where it's more art than it is like a song, because it really paints a beautiful picture. I think it's really great. It's really beautiful, but you have to appreciate it more as like almost a soundscape. It's very beautiful. It's not harsh. Is this unlistenable? Absolutely not. This is actually pretty easy to listen to, but would it be hard for a lot of people to appreciate? I think that's more where this lies. All right, next we're going to talk about Swans. Now, Swans have two sort of main areas of music they made. Earlier in their career, they made industrial, noise rock, no-wave music. And then later, they started getting into more like post-rock, sort of like Godspeed You Black Emperor. So I'll listen to a little bit of both. Let's start off with their first album, Filth. This is really cool. I could see how many people would think this is hard to listen to. It's jarring. That I've enjoyed this album before. So let's listen to some more of their more contemporary post-rock stuff. I know a lot of people really love this, so let's do it. Alright, I don't think this is as harsh as their old stuff. It's definitely easier to listen to sonically. It's not as like jarring, but it's also just really not as interesting to me personally. It just kind of feels long. I like post-rock, but this doesn't feel as rich as something like Godspeed You Black Emperor or Have a Nice Life. It just kind of feels a little bit more boring. I really like the earlier stuff in comparison. This, not so much. And now we're going to get into the third layer. And this is a layer that's filled with a lot of noisy, extreme rock. First, we're gonna start off with the Jesus Lizard. They are a noise rock band from the 80s or 90s out of Austin, Texas. Sonically speaking, the instrumentals are great, they're badass, they're really cool. They're not crazy extreme. I think what makes this kind of isolating and weird is how drunk the lead singer sounds all the time. Next one being Melt Banana, which is another noise rock band. Let's listen to it. That definitely pushes the boundaries of how intense rock music could be. Really, really noisy, really, really intense. Super fun though, like almost like hyper rock is how I would describe that. Next one is Big Black. Big Black is sort of a contemporary of Jesus Lizard from the 80s. They made industrial rock, but they were known for their super crazy guitar tones. They basically like ripped out like the guts of their guitars to get these crazy noises. Definitely more experimental, more unique, really dark as well. I could see how somebody would have a very hard time getting into this. I like it personally. I think it's a cool vibe. Just very tingy and harsh sounding. What I love about Big Black is it sounds so like metallic or electronic, like it's cables basically snapping. It's really cool. It's really unique. It sounds like a factory. Continuing down into the world of industrial music, we have Godflesh. Godflesh is more like droney or sludgy. They came out around the same time. But yeah, let's give them a listen. Still very, very much industrial rock. But they're a lot more sludge or metal influenced. But if you like metal music, I don't feel like it would be that hard to get into that. Next one we're gonna cover is Portrayal of Guilt. Like Orchid, they're like a skramz or noise rock metal band, except they're a lot more contemporary, having just released music this year. Definitely pushing the boundaries. A very intense metal band. You definitely need to have an acquired taste to be interested in this. It's really cool. It's definitely for someone who likes harsher music though. The next one we have is called The Birthday Party. They are again a noise rock band, except they're really well known for sort of having distorted blues. Let's get into it. I think it's more bizarre is how I would sort of describe this. It's not as extreme, but it's more bizarre and kind of eerie and weird. Yeah, I don't know, it's just kind of like more disturbing sounding. Definitely harder to listen to just for like the average person because it's almost like intentionally bad sounding. Yeah, I think this would be pretty hard for a lot of people to get into. I appreciate it because I appreciate Nick Cave's work. Next is Gaza, which is an extreme skramz band. Kind of like Portrayal or Guilt.
I don't care where I go when I die.
Yeah, that's wild. That's crazy. This is on my gym playlist, by the way. I do like this personally. But this is something else. I like this, but this has like this is pretty experimental and pretty extreme. Drome's Dream is another skramz band similar to Gaza. So let's give it a shot. That rocks. That's cool. Pretty intense. Not as intense as like Gaza. Little bit more like grounded feeling. Probably could not put it on in like a casual setting with friends, but if your friend likes metal, that's cool. Next we're doing Full of Hell, which is another sort of like intense hardcore metal band. For me, I'd say that goes incredibly hard. That is incredibly intense. That may be on like a really intense though for the gym. I think that's fire. That's cool. It's really intense. You gotta really like metal. Alright, so this next layer is sort of the world of intense experimental electronic music. We're gonna start it off with SD Leica, Deconstructed Club, which is basically an experimental form of electronic, but he was a Deconstructed Club DJ. Let's give it a listen. Describing that album is probably what schizophrenia sounds like. There's so many like fuzzing, like weird ASMR noises. That's bizarre. Super, super experimental, weird. I don't think there's really anything else like this album on this. Though most people definitely would struggle to easily engage with this, I think it's really cool. Next, we're gonna listen to Kavari. She is a very contemporary musician who makes like dark ambience. Her production is super unique, so we're gonna give it a shot. Like a darker version of Sophie. Very crisp mixing style. That's really cool. Definitely intense and sonically like assaulting in a way, but also very poppy and dancey. Next one we're gonna listen to is called Prison Religion. There's not much about this which like would make the average electronic fan probably interested. It's not very danceable. It's not very like melodic or groovy or anything like that. Very cool from like an artistic sense, but this is definitely getting down there and getting a little bit more crazy and weird. It's not unlistenable, but it's pretty harsh. Next we have Sightless Pit, which is another electronic mix of industrial, modern electronic, and I think power electronics and noise too. Let's give it a listen. That's intense. I would describe that as what 9 Inch Nails thinks it is. I think that's pretty sick, actually. I don't think that's easy to listen to. Next is called Exit Electronics, which is another mix of like modern electronic with power electronics. What the? Yo, texturally, that's like really interesting, but that's just really intense. Holy fuck. I'm not listening to this at a quiet volume, so that's crazy. That's cool though. We're going on to the 5th layer now, and this layer is known as the weird and the eerie, as like harsh as it is like weird or eerie or creepy sounding. A lot of this music comes from this copy pasta of this very weird, esoteric, obscure music. But we're gonna start this off with Scott Walker. Scott Walker was basically like a huge like Baroque pop star in like the 60s, I believe. Then he slowly got more into like crazy, obscure, unsettling music later in his career. First off with Scott Walker. Very haunting. That's creepy. I think the best way to say it is, yeah, that's creepy. That is really, really creepy and unsettling to listen to. Is it harsh? No, but it's so obscure and weird. Well, I can appreciate this. This is a vibe at the same time. Like, I've been able to get into this in the past, appreciate it, think it's cool. It's like avant-garde. It's sort of high art in a way. Next, we're going to look at Nurse with Wound. Drone, dark ambient, industrial noise band. They were known for sort of being part of like just the experimental, weird bands of like the 80s and 70s. It's known to be super creepy and weird, so let's give it a listen. It's a lot of creepy and bizarre soundscapes that kind of just like are yelling at you. I don't know if I can get into this one as much. Yeah, I'm not sure if I would say this is something you can really turn on at all. I don't know if I'd recommend Nurse with Wound. Next is Giles Corey, which is actually the side project from the lead singer of Have a Nice Life. It's basically another neo-folk sort of like ambient experimental album, kind of like a lot of the rest of these. This one's a lot more contemporary, out of 2015. Fun fact about this album, I listened to it when I was alone, dark, in my home alone, late at night, and I turned this on and it freaked me out so much that it physically irked me. It was super scary. While this album is super creepy, it's also really good, and it's also really pretty. It's haunting in a both scary way, but also very pretty and ethereal way. This is a really good album, actually, and though it is weird and eerie and creepy, it's pretty damn good. Next we have Current 93, another experimental industrial neo-folk band out of the 80s and 90s. At some points they're just really spooky and unique, and I think that's cool. I think like they're more experimental, like ambient industrial stuff sounds pretty cool actually. When they do neo-folk though, I'm not a big fan of that, to be honest. It's creepy sounding folk music basically, and I can't say it's super good either. Like some of the songs are alright, but it's not amazing. Their industrial stuff is pretty interesting though, like artistically. Throbbing Gristle is the band that basically started industrial music. So all of this industrial stuff that we've talked about was basically started by these guys. They were really unique and really experimental, but let's give it a listen. It's a lot of soundscapes I know too, so let's I would describe that as extremely experimental. Super impressive that came out during the 70s when they were the first to pioneer it. It's definitely hard to listen to. It's dark, there's like no melody. It's more of like a soundscape. You gotta be a certain person to like this, you know? Next we're gonna listen to Comus, which is like a progressive folk band from England in the 70s. It's known for being super dark and kind of punishing to listen to, so great, more dark, weird folk music. All right, let's listen to it. That's weird, but them boys are having a good time. They're jamming. Yeah, no, that's sick. They're just some weird guys having fun. That's not weird. Okay, compared to the stuff I've been going through at this point, this is some weird guys having fun. I like this. All right, next we're gonna get into This Heat, which is a totally different subgenre called no wave. I don't think we've gotten into no wave before, but no wave is basically a play on the word new wave, and it was this experimental scene in New York in the 80s. So let's give it a listen. Never forget. This is cool. This is just like this is catchy. This is like fun and stuff. I like this. This is cool. This is good. It's catchy. These are good guys doing good things here. This is, you know, it is weird. It's a little eerie, but honestly, it's pretty fire. These guys are doing a good job. To round this all off, we're gonna listen to some Anna von Hasselhoff. Okay, she's definitely very experimental, definitely really different. But out of all of this neo-folk, sort of gothic, dark, ambient folk sort of stuff, it's really well put together. It's really cool. It's artistic. You can tell she spent a lot of time on it. It's definitely a dark, weird, eerie vibe, but it feels really intentional. It feels really cool. It doesn't feel like it's being experimental for the sake of being experimental, which is like what a lot of this last stuff has felt like in this layer. But I can really appreciate this. This feels really cool. I'd actually recommend this if you're more into sort of like artsy, gothic, dark music. So this is all pretty harsh stuff, but it sort of has like a structure to it and stuff. Start off with Uboa. Damn, that's crazy. So this whole other stuff Ebo has put out is really good. It's really dark. It's really intense. Yeah, this is not for someone who has never acquired a taste for this type of music. It's really, really intense. Oh my god. Good. Yes, it's pretty cool, and it's pretty like dark and esoteric and really, really intense. It's a mix of like power electronics, industrial, like ambient music. But it's pretty like artistically impressive. Next is Lingua Ignotia. This is the project of Christian Hater, and this is a mix of power electronic, classical darkwave, neo-folk, extreme metal, and like sometimes like hymns and like classic like hymn music basically. Esoteric, but again, it's like sort of like artistic, and if you kind of have like a taste for these types of artistic things and this sort of like really unique vibe that she puts out, I think you could really appreciate this. Hard to listen to. It's definitely like an acquired taste and something you might not like put on every day. Dream Crusher is known to be one of the most intense artists in electronic. It's somewhere between noise, power electronics. So that is like getting to the point of like ear bleeding. Now I'm a screwed up person. I kind of like this kind of stuff. But if you don't like this kind of stuff, it's intense. Those tones, it's very loud. It's very jarring. I think this would anger some people just by listening to it. But with that being said, it's still like electronic music. Like it still is kind of dancey in a way, in some kind of screwed up way. And it like progresses and it has like song structure. But man, it's like really abrasive. I can't do that all the time, but I do like doing that sometimes. I take out a pilgrim. If you show that to a pilgrim, it might kill them. They might die from that. Next is The Body, which is known to be the most loud act in metal. Doom metal with power electronics. So basically the loudest you can get with metal and the loudest you can get out of industrial or power electronics combined into one. I really like The Body, I'm not gonna lie. I like this band a lot, I'm not gonna lie. But it is crazy. Do I think it's something for everybody? Absolutely not. I've seen The Body twice, and both have been like some of my favorite concerts ever. It is so incredibly loud. No, it kind of scratches an itch for me. The song structure is there. I like it. I think it's pleasant. I think it's pretty cool. I don't know. I like it. I think it's pretty good. All right, next we're gonna listen to Lana Del Rey's industrial experimental noise artist, and she releases some pretty intense stuff. So let's take a listen to it. Really harsh, really a dark vibe. Yeah. That's pretty hard to listen to. But like a vibe, I feel like you can get into it. If you can get yourself acquainted to this type of stuff, this is something that I feel like is somewhat accessible. It is definitely harsh. Let's give Author and Punisher a look. And this is an industrial metal outfit. They're known to be one of the more grating or intense ones, so let's give them a listen. Yeah, that's really intense. There are parts of it that are like melodic and chorus-esque, but a lot of it is not. And yeah, I could see how you would really, that could be really grating and like punishing for someone, no pun intended. But I think it's cool. It's like good for the gym, I think. I think this is like really good gym music. Because there is like a sense of musical structure to it, but I can see how this would be way too intense for most people. We are down to our final layer, layer 7, and this is just where we're gonna get like into some crazy stuff. Of course, we have Merzbow. Sounds like the inside of a vacuum. Yeah, that's really intense. Appreciate it texturally. But it's really loud. It's not easy to listen to that. Next is Pan Daijing, I want to say, is how you say this. This is a, I don't know what this is. Operatic noise is how they describe it, which is a cool thing to describe your music, but let's give it a listen. It's not as loud all the time, which I like, but it is dizzying and disturbing, and a confusing listen. Yeah, deeply disturbing a bit. But next is Alberich, which is a power electronics group. It's mainly like electronic noise, but it's a vibe. It feels curated. It's not really, I don't know if I would 100% call it like music, because it feels, while it is auditory, it just kind of, definitely not an easy listen. I like some power electronics, and this is one of those acts that I can appreciate. This next one is Georgie I don't know how to pronounce that, but let's give it a listen. I'm a little divided. Some of that was like pretty cool, and pretty like a decent track. Like it was like, oh, that feels like some really cool rock. Some of it feels like just like chaotic noise that was captured in like a bad alley in a bad part of town. Next is Brighter Death Now, which is a power electronics group. You're gonna notice a lot of these power electronics groups in this section, but let's give it a listen. Not as bad as some of the others. I can appreciate it. I kind of like the drops they have in the intros. They're pretty fun, actually. Not as intense and like as grating, but it is not an easy listen to. I don't think. Next is Himakaut. I don't know what this is. Some of this stuff like I had. All right, let's take a look. Oh wow, this is some dark shit. I didn't like that. That was a little too much. Okay, next is Consumer Electronics. I hate this, I hate that, I don't like that. That was a negative reaction to that one. Something about that was very, very unpleasant. Next we're gonna listen to something called the Rita. The Rita is a noise electronic. It was just like 5 minutes of static popping. So anyway, next is Hunting Lodge, which is a power electronics group out of Michigan. I kind of like these guys. I'm not gonna lie. I like these guys. But I've liked these guys for a minute. I've been a pretty big fan of the Hunting Lodge. I appreciate it. I know it's not for everybody. And it's definitely way down here because it's weird and it's not accessible and stuff, but I've always really liked Hunting Lodge, and I think it's interesting. I think it's a unique, cool vibe. Not gonna be for most people, but I like it. This is the longest I've ever filmed. My phone died after 6.5 hours of filming. So anyway, Puce Mary, and this is some intense experimental industrial noise. It's been 6 hours. Let's give it a listen. I'm gonna be honest, it just gets old at some point listening to this type of music. I really like this type of music actually. Normally I'm actually like, this just gets old after 6.5 hours, man. It becomes too much. Next is Pharmacon. Let's give it a listen. It's definitely intense. That's challenging. I can appreciate this. I think sometimes I might be in the mood for this. Personally, I could a long time now of just listening to noises at full blast in my headphones. doing this for you guys. It's getting to be a lot. Got one more artist to listen to. It's called Sukliff Jugend. It has a whole 1,300 listeners on Spotify. It was daytime when I started filming. It's nighttime now. Okay, what did we learn? At this point you might be wondering, Carson, what are some takeaways from a video like this? Well, first of all, at some point, this type of music gets old. Even me, someone who really appreciates this type of music normally, after a certain amount of hours of listening to it straight with no breaks, it just gets old. It starts going from something like avant-garde that you can maybe appreciate and understand, and even get into, to at some point just feeling like you're being psyop. Like, it legitimately does hurt your brain after a while of just listening to straight harsh noise. Like I said, I'm a big fan of this kind of stuff. I usually really like it. But after countless hours and basically spending a whole day just listening to this straight, you start to feel like you're being psyop. But I will say this did give me an appreciation for this type of music, because there's certainly a difference in quality between different artists, where some feel like they're just trying to make noise for the sake of making noise, while others really use it as sort of a artistic device to heighten their own message. A lot of this stuff is very grating or makes you want to feel like your ears are bleeding at some point. When used correctly or intentionally to heighten the greater message of the art, I think it can be really interesting and in many times actually beautiful. But yeah, anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed going on this journey with me. And until next time, it's Carson Craning signing off.